I bet. What's up, everybody? It's Chef Candace, and I'm back with another YouTube video. And today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make my beignets inspired by Princess Tiana and the Princess and the Frog. So this is like one of my favorite movies of all time from Disney, next to Hercules. And I served mine just like Princess Tiana did in the movie, which inspired me to cook once again like Ratatouille did. And I served mine with some chocolate sauce. I drizzled it with honey and powdered sugar. They're super fluffy, and I perfected this recipe over a year. So this is my treat to y'all since I haven't been consistent with YouTube. So let's get into it. So before we get started, make sure you check the description box down below to see all of the exact measurements, all of the ingredients, and a brief walkthrough of this recipe video so you guys can have some guidance on how to do it. I also sell this full detailed recipe on my website if you care to donate to my recipe selling business, so I would appreciate it. If not, this is my gift to y'all on making beignets for free on my YouTube. So pause right here to see how to properly bloom yeast. All I'm doing is taking some very warm water that's 110 degrees Fahrenheit and stirring in the yeast with about a tablespoon or so of sugar. If that was off, the exact measurement is going to be in the description box down below once again. And I'm stirring the sugar, the yeast, in the warm water until they're well incorporated and it looks nice and milky like that, and placing it in a warm area to bloom for 10 minutes. Blooming your yeast is important because since we're using active dry yeast, we need to activate it, aka bloom the yeast, so it can work properly when we're making our beignet dough. So while the yeast is blooming for 10 minutes, we're going to go ahead and work on combining all of our remaining wet ingredients. So I have a cup of chilled buttermilk. Make sure you're using a glass measuring cup, not like a measuring cup set. We want to use fluid ounces when we're baking breads and making pastries. I'm adding 1 egg, 2 tablespoons of melted butter, which I did off screen, and you'll see later on that I'm going to go ahead and add all of this to the fully bloomed yeast, which is going to be nice, spongy, and foamy like this if you properly did it. So if it's not looking like this, you did something wrong. And make sure that y'all are not blooming the yeast for anything more or less than 10 minutes. Our next step is going to be adding in our wet ingredients, which is the buttermilk, melted butter, and egg mixture. Then I'm going to go ahead and add in some vanilla flavoring and some cane sugar or some granulated white sugar. If you want your beignets more sweeter, double the amount of sugar in this or even triple it. And I'm using vanilla bean paste for a more complex vanilla flavor. If you can't afford or find vanilla bean paste, pure vanilla extract is fine. I don't recommend imitation vanilla extract just because I don't like it. Just me personally, but if you like it, go ahead. Then once we mix in all the wet ingredients in the KitchenAid stand mixer, we're going to go ahead and sift in our flour. In my beignets recipe, I experimented a lot with cake flour, self-rising, and all-purpose. Purposely, well, no pun intended, I actually like all-purpose flour of all the flour. So unbleached all-purpose flour is great. White Lily brand is phenomenal. I also like King Arthur. So you can use bread flour, all-purpose flour, self-rising, but for this specific video where I finally perfected my beignets, I use all-purpose. So to the KitchenAid stand mixer, I attached my dough hook and I have it on medium high-ish speed, even though it's moving in slow motion, and I'm gradually adding in flour. So I started off with about 5 cups of flour, and you always want to gradually add in the flour. No matter how much you're starting with, gradually add it in while you are kneading, either by hand or in a stand mixer, so it isn't too dry too quick. If it's too dry, it's going to be harder to add in water to get to the ideal texture, which all we're looking for is a very sticky dough that still pulls away from the sides. So to achieve that pulling away from the sides texture, I added in about 5 cups and kneaded it with the stand mixer dough hook for about 8 minutes to 10 minutes until it was nice and sticky like this. As you can see, it was sticking to my hands, so when you're pulling it out of the mixing bowl, make sure you flour or oil your hands so it's easier to work with. But yeah, I just added in about like 5 cups of flour, doing it gradually once again so I don't have too much of a shaggy dry dough where it's going to be harder to make it moist and get to this texture. So always just eyeball it like this, where it's looking like he's Spider-Man. I got some little Play-Doh action going on. You want it to be nice and and sticky like this. So pay attention to that slow-mo. You want that texture. So I greased a large mixing bowl and I preheated my oven to just a warm temperature, like 350 is fine. If you want it lower, since it's like the summertime and it's like hot, go ahead and just put it on the lowest setting. Just put it by a warm area, even in a bread proofer. And we're placing it in a large grease bowl. Once again, I just sprayed it with some nonstick spray and I'm covering it with some saran wrap, also known as plastic wrap. And I'm placing that by the oven or in a proofer and letting that double in size for about an hour. So just make sure you set a timer or just keep an eye on the dough, because you don't want it to go anything over the size of doubled in size. It'll throw off the chemistry, the texture of the beignets. So just set a timer or keep an eye on it, okay? So once that's rising, clean all of your supplies, clean your work area so we have a very seamless cleanup process. And go ahead and clean a work surface like a countertop or a table and flour it. Flour your hands, flour your rolling pin before we use it, and go ahead and sprinkle some of the flour on the dough and work with it. So we're going to knead this dough by hand. This step is crucial. If you want to, you can keep kneading it in the stand mixer since you paid all that money for it, but sometimes I just like to do half and half. Do some of the kneading in the stand mixer with the dough hook and doing it by hand, because by hand I can get more of a precise texture and keep an eye on that gluten development, which is what makes bread. So I'm making sure to keep my hands floured, my work surface floured. Adding in the remaining amounts of flour too. I'm adding in as much flour as needed gradually. Once again, you know, remember we want to add in flour gradually when we're kneading dough. And I'm doing like this pushing up and catching the dough motion. Like how you see people kneading like dough on all them fancy videos and like making bread. So I'm just like pushing up and catching it with my hand and like making like a little circular motion, like going counterclockwise. And I'm adding enough flour gradually. You just gotta eyeball it. I don't know exactly the amount of flour that I added, and I'm just adding in flour and kneading it and working it in, doing this for about 10 minutes back and forth until I get that texture that you see right there that's similar to some supple bouncy pizza dough. So when you press the dough, you'll know it's ready and that you added enough flour if you can press it and it has a texture of a store-bought pizza dough and it bounces back. If it leaves a dent in the dough, you're not done kneading it. Continue adding more flour if needed and working that dough with your hands. Okay, get dirty, get grimy. Then take a floured rolling pin and flour your work surface once again and roll it out to this thickness. I guess that's a 1/4 inch thick. And take a pizza slicer or a pastry cutter and cut these squares to the size that you prefer. Then we heated up some vegetable oil. Some peanut oil will work fine as well, to about 325, between 350. I knew it was ready when I sprinkled in some flour and it started sizzling. You can rewind and see what I mean by that. And I'm adding in about 4 to 5 beignets, depending on the size of your fryer and the size of your beignets. And I'm only frying these for about 1 to 2 minutes on each side, depending if you like them little yellow beignets, them little golden brown ones, or some darker ones like me. They will get darker once you take them out the oil, so just keep that in mind. And I'm just flipping them over to make sure they're evenly colored and cooked on each side. They're gonna puff up and look so pretty, and they just smell so delicious. It smells like a little bakery. And we're just flipping them like that. Make sure you're careful and don't flip no oil on you, and keep an eye on these. Like, don't step away to go catch up on Instagram and the Facebook drama. Like, keep an eye on these so they don't get too dark, because these do cook within 1 to 2 minutes on each side, depending how big they are and how light and color you like them. So as soon as you take them out the grease, drain it on a paper towel or a wire cooling rack and hit them with some honey if you want to be like Princess Tiana, and some powdered sugar. And I also served mine with some gourmet Ghirardelli chocolate sauce. You can use bittersweet, some dark chocolate, some milk chocolate. It's totally up to you. That's optional. But beignets are traditionally served with powdered sugar, a little bit of honey drizzle, and some coffee. If the beignets still aren't that sweet to you, you can always, like I said in the beginning, when you add in the sugar, add more sugar as far as doubling or tripling it. But to me, this recipe is precise, it's perfect, and it gives me a nice traditional, I feel like I'm in a French Quarter feeling. With that being said, look at just how fluffy these are. This beignet recipe in particular is super fluffy, and it reminds me of eating like a fresh yeast donut. It's so amazing. You can even glaze this with different things. You know, if you want to do like a maple glaze, if you want to stuff it with some Nutella, some strawberries and cream, it's totally up to you. But me, I think it's perfect with that honey drizzle and that powdered sugar. These are amazing for breakfast, brunch, or like a New Orleans themed event, and I know you guys are gonna love it. Also, I want to touch on the Hurricane Ida victims. I'm gonna leave some resources down below. Since this is a New Orleans themed recipe, I do want to shed light on those that are being affected by Hurricane Ida. All of my love and support is going out to those victims down there, so make sure you check the link in my bio below to see how you can help them out. Once again, thank you all for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing in advance. We just hit 1K on YouTube and 1K on my mac and cheese video. I'm so excited for all the content I have planned. But in the meantime, comment down below what you guys would like to see me make next on my channel. If you recreate this recipe and anything else that you see on my page, don't feel shy to tag me. I love reposting your guys' support and recreations of my recipes. I love you guys to the moon. So thank you guys so much for watching. Once again, I'll see you all in the next video or on my Instagram and TikTok page. And if you didn't catch it the first time, this is Chef Candace. And when you hear that name, you know it's good because I made it. Stop playing.